Hello, everyone. It's Mike here with People Solving Impossible Puzzles. It's episode 70. Congratulations to Nathan Dube here, the most mind boggling person. We've had him twice on before. Nathan, what crazy topics are flowing through your mind in this beautiful day today?
I'm pretty hyper fixated on trying to figure out what I can do, if anything, to leave the world a better place. I think we're living through a time, 2026, where everything really kind of feels like it's on fire, and I think some parts of the world actually are. But I'm trying to stay focused on what can I do to help make things better. And whether that's through something like my journalism that we just or artwork or music. I kind of figure out things as I'm going. But what's been top of mind lately is just, what can I do to help make the world a better place and leave it better than I found it?
Oh my God, I can so relate. You use the terms you use the topics of journalism, art, and music, and those are like my three. I guess I sometimes fit in there like coding, but those are like the three of four of like my favorite things. And shouldn't we, if we wish to change the world, there's different arguments. Plan A is we got to think about the children. Plan B is we got to think about education and teachers and schools and and philosophy of education. Plan C is we should advocate, we should protest government and send hateful letters. What is your unique philosophy on how the earth shall be redeemed in the Nathan Dube mindset?
That's a very interesting question. There's a concept in both Christianity and Judaism called the New Earth. And know that in the book of Revelation, which a lot of people think are things that are happening right now, despite the fact that John of Patmos wrote that with the expectation that the events would come to pass within 100 years or so. And maybe this is exclusively a Christian idea. I don't know. You'll be able to help me out. But the idea in the Christian sense
I will
is
get
that
my kosher detection Talmudic brain and curly side curls. No, I'm kidding. Go on. Detection.
I saw maybe this is just a Christian thing, but at the end of the book of Revelation, after all the crazy shit happens, the way that I understand it, this is from the classical Christian standpoint, Protestant in particular, is that heaven itself will be, I think, like a giant city that's a cube, and earth will be paradise, but not quite as good as Christianity. And so I think it might be the 144,000, the best of the best, get to live in the heaven cube, and the rest of us are going to be on earth. And that earth in the book of Revelation is called the New Earth. So to piggyback off of the last time we spoke, I believe in this Gnostic Christian idea of the pleroma, which is the perfected universe. I think that the New Earth that more traditional Christians are talking about is something that could potentially be true, but I don't think it's, we got to go through Jesus coming back and, killing 2/3 of the population and, the rivers turning to blood and things like that. Fortunately, I think that was just John of Patmos maybe having a bad day. As it turns out, the island that he was writing that on had a psychedelic mushroom that was indigenous to the island, and I'm wondering if maybe he had too big of a lunch that day.
Mushrooms have crept into your theological expose once again, and how long have you spent? I always am trying to unpack your brain here. How many hours and how much deep brain cells have you devoted to studying the face of the earth? The only people I know who quote, Old Testament Torah this or Talmud this, these are like scholarly rabbis. These are not Jew who works as a lawyer or Jewish religious guy who happens to be a marketer or videographer. No, you're in the theological. You're basically a rabbi and a reverend and a pastor and an imam mixed into one, and then hidden inside a Buddhist monk wrapped in a turban, so to speak.
Yeah, if you've never seen the movie The Life of Pi, I definitely think you should check it out. And he's
Why?
basically
Why?
what you just explained, someone who spent so much of this time. And the film is, the premise of the film is he meets with this guy, I think from the New York Times or something. And I think this is a true story, or it was based on a true story. And, the guy comes to his house and, he says, so you're Hindi, right? He's like, yes, I'm also a Christian. I'm a Muslim. And the reporter kind of cuts him off and says, oh, I bet you're Jewish too. And he goes, no. He's like, although I did teach a course on the Kabbalah last semester. And so the life of Pi is the premise is that this guy from the New York Times or wherever it was comes and says, I was told that you can tell me a story that'll make me believe in God. So I'm not going to tell you the rest of the plot of the film, but it's definitely worth checking out. And in that respect, yes, I am very well read. I would like to be a scholar. I don't have the time to do that, but I can't tell you exactly how many hours it's been because I've been interested in spirituality and pretty much just everything that the human life has to offer since I was 6 years old. I became self-aware on my 6th birthday when I was staring into the French glass doors in front of my house and saw my reflection. And I remember in that moment thinking, wow, I'm really here and someday I will die. And then my friend showed up, but I've been sentient and like aware of like I think a lot more than most people, and certainly most 6-year-olds since then. Now, the way that I've been fortunate to find time to study this in high school, I was a rebellious kid. I was I had dreadlocks. I was out and open hippie. Big into cannabis culture, and I didn't try to hide it. When I was at school, I was often cutting class and I'd go to the library. They had a world religion section and it had a small collection of occult books. So I used to spend a lot of time there just reading about Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Judaism. And of course, as I learned more there, I would try to find other resources. This is back in like 2000. So 2000, 2002, that era, I was like between the ages of 15 and 17. The internet wasn't quite what it is today. It was just after that phase where your modem would scream at you for 10 minutes while you're trying to sign on.
My god!
But yeah, so I mean, whenever I could find the time, so there would be times traveling for work. I could listen to audiobooks. I could listen to podcasts. And so whenever I was traveling, I would do that. There was a while I worked in a print shop for 2 or 3 years, and I worked in the back, and I would often be running large projects where basically I'm just scanning thousands of documents for the client. So, I'd put in a stack of paper, clear a jam every now and then, go hit the button, and it would run for, an hour, it would stop, and I'd repeat the process. So on days like that, I was just perusing the internet. That specific memory comes from I was about 22, I think, at the time. And so whenever I had free time like that, I would just look up random topics. At the time, I think I was particularly interested in Hermeticism. So that was something that I, put a lot of study into it. But, world religions, the occult, the Western esoteric tradition, spirituality in general, all of that interests me deeply. And, as a musician and an artist, I found that, a lot of that stuff would overlap, particularly in the concept and the idea of shamanism. Shamans are, they sing songs and they make artwork, but the reason they do it is to facilitate a connection to the spirit realm, which then they bring back medicine to help those people that are suffering from whatever. And as a musician and an artist, I tend to think that, the artist and musician is a shaman, whether intentional or not, it has that effect. So yeah, it's just, any time that I have to dedicate to it, and, some years have more time than others, I just keep reading. I'll pick up wherever, I left off. For example, as the core of my spirituality is based heavily on Gnostic Christianity. The first time I read the Gospel of Thomas, I was 15, didn't understand it at all, but a few of the passages had an immense emotional effect on me. And I got what I could at the time, which wasn't nearly as much as what's available today. Gnosticism is having kind of its 15 minutes of fame, at least. If you look at the keywords and the amount of people who are looking this up on YouTube and the amount of content being produced. So, zoom up to when I was 38, I want to say. I was reading the Tao Te Ching on audiobook while walking in the woods, and there was something in it that made me, it really heavily resonated with one of the Gnostic Gospels. So I went back, picked up right where I was at 15, found the last, the last chapter or whatever, and I just continued from there. So I'm a voracious reader, and if I can't read, like because I'm driving or whatever, then it's like, okay, audiobook or podcast or whatever. I just want to, memento mori. I don't know how much time I got left on this planet, so I want to make sure that I'm always, digging into the important stuff.
Yeah. You are touching on something very interesting, which is you're advocating for like as much brain cells lighting up, or like we've spoken about before, like the filling of the brain, the populating of the heart, the finding of oneself. I was thinking, I started to sense, I used to read a lot. Then there was a time where I was always reading, maybe from the ages of like, I don't know, 15 to like 20 or something. Then there was a whole period where I was coding all the time. People are like, hello, talk to me. And I'm like, no, unlocked. Like JavaScript. And I was so into coding. Still am a lover of code, but it's weird how life changes in this hobby or this. And then, it's interesting. It's like, it's a lot of people, they're like, Mike, why are you studying all these different languages, and why are you so into like encoding data? And I'm like, I'm finding myself through it. And then it's like, well, why are you podcasting then? You should be focusing just on this. And I'm like, well, you have to understand, if you're doing like something very technical and very complicated, you then sit by yourself in your basement, all by yourself in your basement every day. There's no, you have no access to any, it gets limiting. So then it's like, well, if I do have a podcast and there's the coding and there's some inventiveness, then it starts to become a good blend. And then similar to, I'm talking to different people, and then I'm finding parts of myself that I didn't even know existed based on them triggering topics that I have to think about. And this is the beauty of diversity. You've mastered this for years, is to have a wide net. I'm now a huge advocate for this. You've missionized me, or you've makareved in Hebrew, you could say, or you brought me close to it. Is the idea that to be a generalist, to see things from afar, pattern recognition, if you will, but instead of being laser focused on just one thing in one way, is to be able to have a broad net and talk to different people. As you always say, friends who are Jewish, friends who are Christian, friends who are atheists, friends who are older, friends who are younger. You have not limited your set of communications to just the people you're around, or just men, or just people who are liberals, or just people who are right-wing, or just Trump lovers or Trump haters. You have decided to have this broad perspective, and that is so interesting. And why are you so big on we have to like explore and experiment in every direction and run and through this and that?
Well, I think it's really the only way to fully understand the human experience, if that is even possible within a lifetime, a single lifetime, which I don't necessarily think that it is. And that's there's so many different directions we can go on that. But particularly in 2026, when we see so much calamity in the world, my heart goes out to people who are, sort of heavily burdened with fear, anger, or sadness. And there's a lot of that going on right now. I myself have, gone through that over the past couple of years with all of the crazy things that are happening in the world. But, on the flip side of that, I think a lot of what we're seeing is the foundations of a lot of old systems that worked for a period of time. But because we are a global village now, and literally anyone can get on the internet, make a YouTube channel, and start sharing ideas, those old systems, at least some of them, will completely collapse. And I think we're watching the collapse of some of those things in real world, right now. Whereas in the past, if you go back up let's say you go to the 70s. If you are a, I don't know, 18-year-old kid graduating high school, you were raised in, as a conservative Christian, your worldview is going to be entirely different from, the kid who's graduating high school on the other side of the world in a Muslim country. And, at that time,
Yes.
people didn't have access to a universal mind, the internet. And now we do have that, for good or ill. And there's, to take this a step further, there's a meme that was popular prior to my, I guess you'd say it, deconversion experience. And it was two young girls, probably, I'd say teenagers. One of them has a cross on her neck, the other one has a hijab, and that one has a Quran and one has a Bible. And the caption is, "Oh, look, you're going to hell." And then the next girl says, "Oh, look, you too." And see, the thing is, like that meme was very powerful and remains powerful to this day. And it's true because it's perfectly fine to believe that, if you're a Christian, that Muslims are going to hell. If you're a Muslim, that, everyone else is going to hell. But both of them believe that, like, everyone except us.
Everyone except us. Oh my God!
You can't avoid conversations about that anymore. And I mean, people are more likely to have friends in different religions, in different belief systems, in different, classes and whatnot. Like, it's got to a point where there's no excuse not to be having the hard questions.
Oh my God!
And people are having them.
Yeah. I'm just echoing this sentiment. It's a very good point. It's a very, very interesting point, is that it's not so easy to just pretend that we're pre-internet, pre-YouTube, pre-Google search. We can't, once we've crossed the Rubicon, once humanity has crossed the Rubicon of mass information sharing and anyone always makingness of humanness, of makingness, of sharingness, the YouTubings, if you will. Once you cross that line, then of course all bets are off. You can no longer say unless you're Amish and you're gonna like push out all the routers, or refuse a horse tied to a buggy, and we're not going to change that because that wasn't bad when we had it. And unless you're going to set up these enormous Berlin walls or whatever, iron curtains metaphorically, you're forced to actually
and you can see it in America right now, like with the Trump administration. Like, they're pushing a very specific type of MAGA Christian nationalism. So it's certainly doesn't look anything like the teachings of Yeshua ben Joseph, or for anybody who's never picked up a concordance, that's Jesus Christ. It's a Greek alliteration. But nowadays, you got a 10-year-old kid who goes to church every Sunday. And if you're at a church like Pete Hegseth's church, they believe some pretty outlandish things. And you are exposed to this idea that Muslims are bad. They want to invade our country. They want to incite Shia law, where, everywhere they come in. But that 10-year-old kid can go online now and find another 10-year-old kid who is Muslim and watch his YouTube channel and realize, within a very short period of time, that's bullshit.
That's right. So, fact checking, the speed. Yeah, everyone's got a phone, and then with the phone, you do your fact check. And then right away that what you were told isn't line up with truth. So now you have to question whoever told you, and then who told them, and then it's almost impossible. It's impossible to lie and maintain a lie in a world of endless mediums, endless media. Media is the plural of mediums, I guess. And it's so interesting. I was born 1984. And then I grew up in such and such a world with such and such a thingy. Mm-hmm. But there was no Google search. There was no YouTube. I couldn't hear a Muslim person talking about how great Islam is, adjacent to a non-Muslim person who doesn't know anything about Islam, or isn't saying the complete opposite. It's amazing we even still have mainstream news. Don't you think that will just disappear someday?
Well, yeah, I mean, journalism in general is under attack here in America and the UK. I mean, the UK's gotten so crazy that if
Mm.
you hold a sign saying, I'm pro-Palestine or something, you get arrested. I watched an
Oh,
80-year-old
really?
woman
Oh my
get
God.
arrested, dragged off the street. Like you literally cannot hold cardboard signs that are pro-Palestine in any way. You will get arrested. It's crazy the rate of which that's happening. So,
That's not even a fun.
here,
That's okay. I didn't know it's okay. I'm not up to date. It's so interesting that things get so, as you were saying, Trumpistic Christian nationalism, and yeah, it's kind of scary. Now, I'm not a big news consumer, obviously, but it's scary when the odd clip on a YouTube this, or I'm posting
yeah,
literally loading a file on YouTube, and it's like Hexus this, and the craziest things. I couldn't help myself to fall down a rabbit hole for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and it's just like Hegseth, Department of War, and then people are asking him questions, in a Senate meeting or whatever it was, and they're like,
right.
okay, so when you impregnated your third wife while you were still married to your second, when she had a baby at home, and you were charged with like rape, and I'm like, oh my God. And then meanwhile, the world's at war, and this is exploding, and over here, and or Strait of Hormuz, and then and it's so complicated because like if you're only around Jews or only around Muslims, or if you, me being a Jew and I walk into a university program the other day, and of course it's such and such a program where half the students happen to be Muslim, and
Yep.
and they're all lovely people. No one, and also they said they were not really practicing. Yeah, when I was back home in Pakistan, it was different. Here I'm in university getting an MBA, and
Right.
a person has a technology company that they're starting up or fundraising for. So it's like I'm not seeing like the Taliban hanging people for taking off their burqas. It's a different ballgame. It's a different situation. And if you live in a cosmopolitan, metropolitan city or near one, and you're in it, people are not literally, unfortunately, a little bit, but most
Yeah.
of the time, if you have an event, even if it's a free event, but like
Yeah.
there's food, and you have a Canada Dry ginger ale, and they have maybe some kosher chips, and they
Yeah.
have a nice bar, and the beer's available, and they have some beautiful pizza or something.
Mm.
People do not fight even if their brother, even if their grandparents would have killed each other if they were put face to face. When you have food and investors and startups and marketing people, and you're being filmed, for pictures
Yeah.
for Instagram, suddenly the everything changes, and everyone's enjoying life, and life is good, and life is short, and we should be enjoying it. But you
Mm.
don't. It's the opposite of world war or chaos or bombs going off. Yet it's a bunch of Jews and Muslims all thrown in a room together. So how does it make sense that in one part of the world, maybe a more affluent and more open-minded part of the world, nothing is everyone's celebrating and lazy, and in other parts of the world, people are working their head off, killing each other, world war. The whole news
Mm.
is telling us the world's at war. If you
Yeah.
watch it, it's almost that's the business. The businesses of media is to paint that the world's at war and chaos, and it's about to fall apart. But it wasn't falling apart yesterday. It wasn't falling apart 10 years ago. We're still here. We have not.
Right.
There's no. I'm not hiding under my desk like my mother would have done in the 1960s. And what are your thoughts of this madness, of the challenging times we live in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're totally right. Someone who grew up in a conservative Christian home versus someone who grew up in a hardcore atheist atmosphere versus someone who was raised, maybe a liberal Muslim, maybe, it doesn't really matter the who and the what. The thing is that those people who had those worldviews prior to the internet could go through their entire life and never have the opportunity to speak to the person that they were told was evil or bad for whatever reason. But again, going back to that 10-year-old kid, not only can that 10-year-old kid, the Christian kid, who goes online, finds another 10-year-old kid who is a devout Muslim, not only can he watch his videos, if he really feels compelled, he can send them a message and they can live chat immediately. And a lot of this is happening. And again, that's going back to the idea, the YouTube effect.
Yeah.
Basically, the way I see it is you have no excuse for being a shitty person today.
I love that.
You just
That's a
don't.
great
So if
meme.
you are a shitty
That's a
person
good
and
one.
you're saying and doing horrible things against another group of people, it's like, okay, well, why? It's like, well, my 2,000-year-old book said it. It was like, okay, well, how about this? Why don't we get someone who has a 2,000-year-old book on the other side of the pond, and we'll sit down virtually and we'll talk this out. And obviously, those situations still sometimes, crumble into a mess. People get angry. They go back on their staunch beliefs. They say, well, this book says this, so fuck you. But
Yes.
because of the connectivity that we have today, because you can educate yourself on things that you might not have had access to back in the 70s. And again, die 88 years old and not know that as a Christian that Muslims love Jesus. There's no excuses for that today. So if you're in an echo chamber, it's because you're choosing to be in an echo chamber. If you think that all Muslims are going to hell, that's all well and good, but you can't you can't believe that. And someone asks you, well, why? And they say, well, just because the book says this. You now can get academic peer-reviewed papers on all the world religions. You can talk to people from any of the world religions.
That's right.
And we have the opportunity now to speak to people who are entirely different from us. And obviously, some people are going to revert back to that, and they're maybe they're comfortable in that, but you can't excuse yourself for not being aware. I want to say the truth, but that's you're going to get, when we're discussing different religions, that can become a messy thing. But
plurality, the plurality of, there aren't even words to describe it. It's such a new phenomenon. It's only been around. It's really COVID. The post-COVID era was a change in the I'm even trying to vocalize the idea. It's complicated. It's like the idea that people are freely available to discuss with each other or even record the discussion. It's pretty meta here. You can just freely chat with anyone in the same way that an analogy always helps to have a good mashal in Hebrew, an analogy. And the analogy I've learned to think of is like, it used to be a thing called photography, and there were stores where you had to buy a camera and buy film. This is even before I was a little kid. I remember, like, buy a camera, buy film, take pictures, protect, shield the film, pay for someone to develop the film in a dark room into actual
chemicals,
real chemicals that, like, this was a physical thing. Then finally you cherish your, like, one picture, your 20 pictures that cost $20 to develop, plus the film, plus the time you have to wait. Suddenly comes a digital camera, and it's one with you. It's digital, so once you take the picture, you can see the picture, and then the picture is basically free. I mean, you have to pay the $200 to get the digital camera, like we all did. Whoever was lucky to have one back, I don't know, before the iPhone, maybe 2004, 2005, whatever. But then comes today. It's like, now you take a picture, now you can share it. Video, you can take a video, you can share it. You can chat to someone in all you need is internet access, some kind of audio. You don't even need video, and you can have a discussion. What this does is it breaks all fundamental walls have been torn down, and even the most tiniest of walls, like not just the Jews versus Christians versus Muslims versus Buddhists, or not even versus, but then it's like you can talk to every variety of people, and people are now, it's even socially acceptable and even encouraged to talk. So now you have like a Jew who's not practicing and wants to practice, a Jew who used to practice and doesn't want to practice, a Christian guy who's secretly pretending that he wants to do this. Every hobby, every mishmash, 100 million YouTube channels. And not only are people making things, but people are commenting on things and watching things they don't want to watch, and watching things they told themselves yesterday that they wouldn't watch. How many times have I watched something that I myself, if you told me the day before that I would be watching it for an hour, I would tell you I don't know anything about poodle. Suddenly, after half an hour, I'm learning about this podcast about which pink poodle is the most poodle, and it's actually frightening. And even what we're talking about right now, someone will be watching, and then we'll be impacting them and future change and alter them, and it's actually frightening the ability to make information endlessly freely share it,
Mhm.
and also the guts to do it. The fact that it's almost there's not even repercussions ever to say anything, because now if everyone's saying anything to anyone, then it loses its ability to have any effect negatively, and now everyone's just being everyone can be authentically themselves or lie to themselves and pretend to be
Yeah.
something they're not and sell a bunch of things no one needs. And where do you think this will all lead in 10 years from now?
Well, we know people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. They want to see the manifestation of the singularity, the fusing of their technologies with the human body, which I think that is probably one of the worst things that could ever happen. It's interesting. You know, someone in my life is a conservative who's still very much devoutly Christian, and but they're hardcore conservatives, and for lack of a better terminology, I mean, Elon Musk is at the heart of the MAGA community. Even though him and his bro Trump got into a fight earlier this year, and Elon Musk said the reason why Trump isn't doing this is because he's in the Epstein files, and that caused the whole thing in and of itself. But I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay. There's so many ideas flying around. And
what was the question you asked, though?
Oh, I was curious. What are your thoughts, like in the future? Let's say 10 years from now.
Okay,
at the
yes.
pace of the social change regarding media sharing, the lack of all the walls coming down. That sort of topic.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I see it essentially going in one of two directions. AI has changed things forever, and that is out of the box. Pandora's box is open. I think it largely depends on what happens with that, and because it seems like today that people are in very black and white camps over AI. Either they hate it, fuck it, or they love it and they think it's the greatest thing. I think depending upon what AI actually does and how it is fed, we could be moving towards ultimately a utopian society, or we could be moving towards the literal, intro scene from Terminator 2.
I love
Now-
scene. That scene's deep in my memory from when I first saw the movie in theaters. What was that, like?
But we're there, I mean,
1993? We
Skynet
are Skynet.
absolutely happens tomorrow. Like the
Doomsday.
groundwork has been laid. And the thing, as an artist, a lot of people think that I would probably be just staunchly anti-AI, and I certainly do not support any artwork that is taken without permission and being uploaded to these platforms, which we know that's how they train their platforms, to do their writing, to do their artwork. And yeah, sure, they're in some instances they're quote unquote doing it right, where they're paying people 2 cents an hour in Uganda to write the answers to the prompts, and so they're building this thing. But I guess going back to my idea of that, we utopia versus dystopia, and obviously it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle because of the complexities of the things we were talking about: geopolitics, religion, science. But the reason I'm not even, because I am an artist, I'm also a marketer and a salesperson and a musician. The reason I'm not 100% like, fuck AI, don't use it. It's bad. Like, no more art or music given or generated from AI. The reason I don't believe in that is because I have been exposed to it and been using it professionally since 2021. I was using ChatGPT. I got it in like beta mode because someone in my professional network had early access to it, and so I've been using it since then. And for marketing and sales, it's made my life significantly easier. Now, as someone who is an artist and a musician, I definitely resonate with people who have had their music or poetry or their books, scanned by this software. And now that knowledge and all those blood, sweat, and tears went into that. And none of these people, for the most part, are getting royalties or anything from it. And a lot of them never will. So I totally get that. And part of me wants to be like, fuck AI, burn all the data centers to the ground. Like, this is a monster and we need to cut its head off. The reason I'm not doing that is because if we stop feeding AI art, music, poetry, beauty, kindness, love, then the only thing it's going to be feeding on is content from shitheads like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, who very badly want a surveillance society that is controlled through the threat of violence through tools like what Palantir deployed in Gaza. If we only feed AI on the military industrial complex, on weaponry, on power, on the pursuit of money, we're going to go very quickly in that dystopian direction. So for as long as AI is a thing, I think it's important that, don't take someone else's artwork, but I think as an artist, I feel like it makes sense for me to create artwork and upload it to AI for the very simple fact that AI, in my opinion, has to be able to tap into beauty and poetry, music and artwork, because
Interesting.
if it's not fed on that and all of it's getting is darkness, violence, and surveillance in the military industrial complex, it's going to turn into that exclusively, and then we might end up with that technocratic nightmare where we are basically just the slaves of people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Jeff Bezos.
You're right. There is, okay, so yes, there is a rich getting richer, poor getting poorer, and there is the idea that, okay, we're just unpacking this, just a mirror holding to your explosion of such wise reflections. There's a very interesting layer here. You're saying that on one hand, poor artist musicians who have had their art vacuumed into some cyclonic, some kind of magical large learning LLM, large learning model, and then from there spits out fabrications of inhuman, demonically, or like inhuman arts. But, which of course doesn't necessarily any of the money which these arts generate from their generative AI doesn't end up going to the people who are training the AI generative tools in the first place, which is its own paradox, its own conundrum and moral ambiguity. But then the other side of the coin is, well, if you don't allow the totality of human art and music and creation, every song, 100 million songs on Apple Music and Spotify, if you don't feed them into the system, which steals from the artists in the first place, then what do you feed? Then you have a bunch of AI, let's call it rich getting richer AI, totalitarian AI, where it becomes a bunch of, we're only going to generate the arts, musics, and journalistic writings and mediums characteristic of whoever built the AI, whoever benefits most, perpetuating
like
their own
state-sanctioned
ideology.
television, like the one TV channel you have in North Korea.
So eventually, wait a second. So we're saying here that although we do not know what the future holds, we are tending towards a loss of democratic thinking. Not even thinking, but the idea of everything's so half of all of human acts are AI tampered, and the AI tampering is itself tampered with by the the people who hold all the cards anyway. Then everything gets tainted upon tainted, and then over time, you're basically saying the United States of America is heading towards the fascism, and basically.
It absolutely is heading towards fascism currently, and I mean that's what the Trump administration is doing or attempting to do. There's no question of that. And what you just said about AI makes sense to me, and that's like a new perspective that I hadn't thought. The fractal iterations of the good things, artwork, music, and etc. that just turns into slop. With a lot of people are saying that's not what I was getting at, and basically it's that what I'm saying is that we need to feed AI artwork, beauty, storytelling, artwork and beauty and music, because if it's only being trained on how to use drones to kill a large population of quote unquote enemies, the
Oh,
military applications that it's being used for, um, you
yes.
know, it's garbage in, garbage out, and, when Jesus says, how to identify somebody that's good, you'll know them by their fruit. A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. So while I understand artists and musicians being angry about AI and hating it, and I'm not suggesting that they should just go and upload all of their work knowing that they're not going to get anything for it. I think there should be systems put into place that allow musicians and artists and poetries and storytellers and authors to upload it with a guaranteed return on, getting paid for what they're uploading to it.
Attribution. There should be
Yeah, there you go.
attribution
But at the end of the day,
okay.
my main message is if we only feed it darkness, then darkness is all we're going to get.
If you only feed it darkness, darkness is what we're gonna get. And okay, it's actually frightening when I think about, and sometimes I hear things I wish I didn't hear, or hear things I wish I didn't hear, or and then hearing like that the university students are now just like everything is tainted with like ChatGPT and no one's even reading anymore. And then you talk to someone who's like a career advisor through a university. There's whole people where their jobs are just to be like, go to the 18-year-olds, 18 to 25-year-olds, and be like, no, you need to actually be able to do something for, and then of course there's no job for them anyway because that's been consumed by AI. So they're both, the average. This is almost frightening. This is a real life horror movie. Thankfully, I'm 42 and I'm past that conundrum. But yeah, it's actually scary if I think of myself as like, what would I be doing right now if I was 20? I would be using all these AI tools, so I wouldn't be thinking at all. They would be doing all the work, and then after I get a degree that I'm paying God knows how much for, many of which may not be useful in certain areas. And then all I'm doing is there is nothing waiting for me because all the automation has destroyed the entry level workplace anyway. So
Right.
isn't it the ultimate paradox that here we've created the very tools are being used to make stupider the people, the
Mm.
university students, if you will, the very tools, the very mass produced tools to mass produce all sorts of writings and thought processes are being used addictively by the very people to enable even better tools. So there's nothing waiting for them anyway, and there's only left senior lawyer jobs and senior accountant jobs and senior this. So and also there's nothing left for anyone to do. What do you think about? Yeah, I keep hearing this. Well, what is everyone supposed to do if there's not enough things to do?
I mean,
What are we
I
supposed to
think
do all
if
day?
I think if that actually happens, a universal basic income is going to be necessary. Which I'm looking at America right now. I mean, they're talking about taking the vast majority of people's health insurance and their social security away. So the idea that you'd have a UBI in America, I mean, that just seems absurd. I guess we'll see what happens in the next election if we have one.
Oh, now we're getting really super dystopian. You are not feeling the, what's the saying by Martin Luther King, that over time the arc of history bends towards, is long, but it bends towards justice. I gotta look this up. The arc of history.
I'm familiar with what you're saying. I mean, it makes sense that I mean, history does repeat itself. I see it myself in my own life. Like there are times when I'll be looking at my phone because I'm standing in line to, I don't know, get an ice cream cone or whatever. And I see a memory on Facebook that pops up, and it's me getting an ice cream cone the year before on that same day. So
Deja vu, Facebook,
like
social
everything.
media deja vu. Yeah, I saw it this other day and I'm not the most active Facebook user, but it's like, oh, 7 years ago today you posted this video, and I'm like, oh my God, 7 years ago I did post that video, and do I need to be reminded what I did in the past on this calendar day? Like, isn't that too much? And it's like, oh, and if you were a better video editor, the video would have came out like this. And I'm like, oh, now you're insulting me. And it's, oh, and if we take these pictures you loaded, we could make it into a video. And I'm like, no, I'm the one. I'm the guy who does the making of the video. That's a personal thing. I'm not trying to automate it. The lost art, the lost art of losing art. And well, that's a good one. It's actually kind of, it's frightening sometimes when it's like this Claude tool and this ChatGPT tool, Anthropic this and Claude and Opus, and then it's like everyone wants to be a founder and everyone has a product and everyone's a founder and CEO of a company that doesn't exist, that has no product and has no revenue, and then I'm like, why am I talking to you again? How did I get connected with you? They're like, oh, I wanted to pitch the startup. I'm like, no, that's the other Mike Merker who's the venture capitalist. No, I'm not living in Manhattan. No, I mean, but I'll listen for 10 more minutes. Actually, do you want to be on my podcast? And then suddenly we can't, it's almost, there's a weird mix-up, match-up. I'm ranting here. It's like a weird mix-up of what, it's like so much is moving and shaking in weird directions that it's like it almost forces wanting to have a Trump-like character tell the average person what he should be thinking. It's almost like that's become a need out of changing times. The Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. What say you?
I mean, I definitely think like the poorly educated need something like that, which is, perhaps not unironic that Trump actually said, I love the poorly educated. And I think that's why he's systematically destroying education in the U.S. I mean, the current person who's running the Department of Education is Vince McMahon's wife, the guy who runs the World Wrestling Federation.
What?
When she was questioned about what she thinks, is a big topic that, younger kids in the K through 6 should be focused on, is like, oh, we really need to make sure that kids are getting educated on A1. And the person, interviewing was like, well, what do you mean A1? And she's like, oh, A1, the thing with the computer. She meant AI. She didn't even know that it was AI.
A1?
She thought it was A1.
Oh my God. Wait, you're talking about Vince McMahon's wife? I believe, the WWF? What? She's in charge of the future of the systems to teach the next generation when we're all gone and that's all that's left? It's all being calculated by a woman whose husband was all about men wearing tights, grabbing each other's butts. What? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And steroids and pretending to hurt each other and all sorts of ripped T-shirts and all sorts of funky face painting. Hopefully that's not. Oh, but I guess that was normal in the late '80s when I was a younger man.
WWE is still huge. I mean, it has a massive fan base. I never understood it and thought it was kind of stupid. I've met people who are really all about it, and I can get it from a theater perspective. But not to go off on a tangent, but yeah, Linda McMahon is the education secretary in the U.S. And when so. She didn't know that AI was pronounced AI. I mean, that's a problem in and of itself while she's trying to sell the idea that kids K through 6 should be using it. Donald Trump is like personally attacking institutions like Harvard. He's tried to sue them a bunch of times. I think he's won a couple, but if you look at the numbers, there's a lot of smaller like community colleges that are in dire straits or going out of business and closing the doors. And I think when Donald Trump says he loves the poorly educated, it's because the poorly educated vote for him. I have a lot of compassion for poor people who identify as MAGA because a lot of them are uneducated. I've been fortunate that, I had a good education and as an autodidact with the internet, and AI, I can use these tools to find information on anything I want. I could look up the history of the Amistad. I could find out who built the Eiffel Tower. In that respect, as those tools, they're super powerful but an uneducated populace isn't going to use it for that. And the people that I have the biggest issue with are affluent people who identify as MAGA, because a lot of them know that what Trump is doing is a systematic destruction of things like education as a whole, because they know that out of that situation, they're probably going to get money and other things that they want out of it as well. So they don't care that the non-affluent MAGAs are voting for Trump. And if it was somebody else, it wouldn't make a difference. And it would be the same thing if it was a Democrat. A lot of people will be like, oh, so, you're a left-wing lunatic. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm a progressive. I definitely lean towards that. But, I'm not going to support a Democrat just because they're blue, like to go back to the Epstein files, like I don't care if you were a Republican or a Democrat, if you were fucking kids, you should either be in jail or, getting scheduled for public execution.
So what you're saying there is there should be lines drawn somewhere in the, not in the sand. There should be lines, there's serious fences put up, not just lines in the sand. This is actually, we've opened a number of can of worms here, and
Many worms.
you know what, when I was younger, I remember when I was like 10 years old, and it was like 1990, whatever, 1995. It was always like, oh, the kids these days are like this and a bump a doop, but oh, terrible. And then 30 years before, it was probably like, oh, these kids are listening to all this 60s music and liberal ideas. And then 30 years before, it's like, oh, these Nazis are going to take over the earth. And then 30 years before, it was probably like, these Frenchmen are invading the British and this war will go on forever. And 30 years before that, there's always, and now it's like, oh, technology's destroying the fabric of the known universe. So there's always some, communism will just take over, just gobble the earth. There's always some problem of the era, problem of the time that captures everyone's attention, that populates all the ad revenues for all the mass media outlets. And there's always this kind of conundrum of like, what is going on and what are the hot topics? And then, but at the same time, I see like a 14-year-old building an AI company and a 15-year-old running it, as a junior high student or whatever, is popping out a company. And then wherever you go, everyone's got 10 startups and 6 apps and 15 companies that don't exist. And so we've entered into this strange fugazi of a bizarre time. And yeah, I'm even talking about it is itself a calamity. The thinking about it is it is kind of scary when you can just like copy a huge amount of text into like a tab on Google Chrome, and then all of a sudden it tells you exactly what was said in it, and then you can manipulate that summary into a different and then you go from there. Like that's actually, it's kind of like inventing some kind of intellectual nuclear warhead that once you have, you can't unhave, and then everyone wants it, and then everyone having it threatens everyone else with it, and then we basically have entered into an AI arms race against humanity against itself. I guess
that does seem to be happening to some extent or another. And you brought up, the kids who are starting companies with AI. I mean, that's why I think education is super important. We need to go in the opposite direction of where we're heading, because AI, in the hands of the right people, could build a utopia. It could find ways to solve world hunger. It could find ways to get water for everyone. It could find ways to help everyone start a small business or write that book or do the things that they dream. And if you just look at where we are today, it's like, yeah, there are wonderful things like that happening. And then, you see what Palantir's doing with their drone program in places like Gaza and Lebanon. And it's like, okay, that's the other direction. And you brought up something that, before I forget, you said like, everybody is, everyone's talking about AI because they want to be considered a thought leader. Like, if you're a thought leader on LinkedIn and you got X amount of followers, you've made it. But there's a very big problem in America right now, and it's that everybody is obsessed with being a millionaire, and if you don't become a millionaire, you're a failure. And that is one of the most poisonous beliefs that I think exist in America today.
Yeah.
And when I was doing a lot of Jupiterian wealth-based magic in my 20s when I was making the best money of my life. And at one point, I remember thinking, like, if I keep going down this road, I'm going to become a conservative.
If you keep going down this road, you'll become a conservative. I get it. I'm just taking all this in.
I mean, I'm not against making money. Like Steve Irwin said, I love money. I can't get enough of it. But Steve Irwin, he's like, I'm going to take that and make nature sanctuaries. I'm going to protect the Amazon forest. I'm going to, do all this great stuff. And I'm not saying that you have to be Steve Irwin with that. But the idea that, like, if you're not working to become a millionaire, or you're not working to be the next guy in Shark Tank that everyone's talking about, it is eroding, and in many instances already has destroyed the middle class in the US. We used to be, lower middle class, upper middle class, and that was a range. We are, for anyone who has eyes to see, we are fast becoming the haves and the have-nots. And there is a lot of opportunity today. A have-not can have a smartphone, start a business, and be a billionaire a year later. These things can happen.
I heard this. I live in Canada, where things maybe are a little bit slower and a little less super paradigm shift, but that is actually crazy. Yes, there are companies where it's like an inhuman entity started the company, hired people, manages people, pays people, has employees, but there's the only person running the company are a bunch of computer wires that don't exist in reality, with a bunch of information superhighways. And
I haven't seen any examples of that. I know that there are people who are building things like that, which is crazy to think. And like, and it's like, that's part of the obsession. Like, I see a lot of people on LinkedIn talking about vibe coding, like, oh, I created an app today. I've never, created an app in my life. And it's cool to see all these things. And if you're using, AI to build something good and beautiful, my fear is it seems to be pushing this Ayn Rand, borderline satanic ideology of the most important thing is your individuality, and you're always looking out for number one.
Ayn Rand, satanic, super individualistic, super uber capitalist, satanic Ayn Rand.
I mean, Ayn Rand,
those proper nouns and mixed of superlative adjectives are. I think we have gone off the rails in this. In the last. Oh, we're almost at an hour. In the last 2 more minutes that we have, what would be your freestyle rant, as if you were a gangster rapper, but instead of ladies' butts shaking and N-words and curse words and African Americanisms? What would you say as a freestyle rap rant about how we can redeem humanity?
Well, it's interesting you bring up like a freestyle rapper. I mean, I guess the answer's right there. Like first and so the 3 ways to save the world would be: 1, know yourself. Yes. Integrate your shadow. Accept yourself fully for who you are. Don't pretend to be something because you're going to offend your grandmother or the CEO. So sovereignty. Become a sovereign individual who knows themselves.
Sovereignty means me, be me, do me, only me, I.
Be unashamedly yourself.
Unashamedly yourself is.
Be authentically and honestly yourself, because as they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you're pretending to be someone else, and you've done that for 40 years, you're going to attract an entirely different life than you really want. If you are not being your authentic self, you will build a life around lies. So first and foremost, be honest with yourself, who you are, love yourself, be the sovereign individual, be authentically who you are. 2, find your passion and pursue it, to an extent, because some people have sold the idea like, as long as you work super hard. So if you're working 80 hours a week and you stay focused on, because you want to make custom pillows for cats, someday you'll be a billionaire of the cat pillow company. I think that's very dangerous, because you can work your ass off for 100 years and still die in poverty. So I think your passions are important and you do want to pursue them, but you also, you gotta pay the bills. You gotta clean the dishes. You gotta, if you have a dog, it needs food. So, but it is important to be aware of what you were passionate about and work on it. And it's, hey, you want to chase a crazy dream, do it. But after maybe 20 years and let's say you're 78 by the end of that period, you might want to shift gears to another passion or something to that effect. So knowing yourself, sovereignty as a human being, knowing what your passions are and going after them with responsibility, and connecting with other people with with the focus of making the world a better place than it was when you got here. You know.
Amen. We shall pause on this high note. Amazing.